it's not about being at one team and being a second driver or just being happy I'm in the sport. It's about how I want to be remembered. And to me, that says he's not happy with just being in the background and, just letting, I guess, life pass you by as an F1 driver. He wants to be fighting for titles. He wants to be given the opportunity to succeed and be the best he can be, because he wants to look back. He spoke about, the fame. He's like, I don't want to be famous. Hello guys, welcome back to another episode of the We Racing podcast. I'm here with Matt again. We're here for another exciting week of updates and news in the racing world. How are you, Matt?
I'm very well. Attempt number 2. Let's see how we'll go.
Hopefully no more technical difficulties. But listen, like in life, like in racing, there's always going to be technical difficulties. And it's a good segue, to be fair, onto our topic today, talking about difficulties, because we are going to be talking about the Sergio Perez podcast, which came out this week, where he spoke about his racing life, his younger years, the difficulties, the good times, and again, what's just generally like to be an F1 driver. So yeah, I'm glad, and let's just jump in.
Absolutely. I'm actually glad that we had to re-record. Yeah, because you don't know, guys, we have to record this podcast because yesterday we recorded and you found out that it's some technical difficulties and we can't use it, so we're recording it again. But actually, I'm glad because I found out some additional stories that I'll be able to share today.
Fantastic. Everything happens for a reason. So diving straight in, obviously we both have seen the episode. I mean, before we go into it segment by segment, what was your overall thought on the podcast and Sergio in general?
I'm actually glad that those pieces are coming out because we can see the real stories, real perspective from the drivers, which sometimes, they bonded by the contract. They cannot say specific things. So I'm really glad that those kind of, let's say, tastes from the behind the scenes we are able to see, and drivers are willing to share them as well, because it wasn't very common until, let's say, 2-3 years ago, and now I'm actually glad that we are able to deep dive on the driver's mind, what's happening when in a difficult situations.
That's the thing, because we like to think as the general public we know these people and we know these drivers. We know them as a driver and the couple of minutes they're actually speaking on TV, but we don't actually know the person until we get a sort of behind the curtains look. And talking about behind the curtain, I mean, it shows a bit of behind the curtain of his mentality by, I think, what one of the main things said, or the first things he said, was the sabbatical is over.
Yeah.
So he didn't call it a break or a stop or anything like that. He referred to it as a sabbatical, in the sense of, he always had every intention to come back. He had every intention to get behind the wheel again. And again, it just goes to show his mental fortitude and kind of knowing that I'm good enough to be in the sport.
Absolutely. Well, he's a driver who was, get rid from the team 3 times. First in McLaren when in 2012 or 2013, then in Racing Point, Force India, when Lawrence Stroll took over the team, and now from Red Bull, that there was no space for him anymore. And then we found out actually that Christian Horner, maybe not only him, but Red Bull made terrible decision came out because he was the only one who was able to actually keep maybe not the same pace as Max Verstappen, but closer than his predecessors.
100%. I mean, if you were Checo, what kind of emotions do you think you'd be feeling going through this kind of transition? Obviously, you've been let go from Red Bull, the Red Bull situation, obviously not had a seat, but obviously coming into the Cadillac in the new season. I mean, what kind of feelings do you think he's going through?
Well, I think it's the whole topic of his career, to be fair. I think in his mind was, I've done it before, let's do it again. And I'm really glad. I'm actually hoping that he signed with Cadillac very shortly after he left Red Bull, because there was no rumors really. I mean, everybody knew that it could be Perez, it could be Bottas, it could be Ricardo. So those 3 names were always on the top steps to take over Cadillac seats. So I'm really glad that he is back. I'm really glad that he was able to do this podcast, and I'm really glad that we able to see him again, because Checo is a fantastic driver. Don't get me wrong, and I'm really glad that I can watch him race again this season.
Yeah, I mean, it's in this sport. As a fan of this sport, you want to see the best drivers competing in the best machinery, for the best teams, and that's what makes it exciting. So to have people coming in with Checo and Bottas, to be fair, of experienced drivers. Usually you've kind of got one experienced, one rookie. We've got two experienced drivers that know and that have both been in teams with world champions. So
Yes.
both of them bringing that experience to the team, I think is only going to bode well for Cadillac. In terms of that, do you think they're going to be under? Do you think he's going to be under more pressure, less pressure? What do you think he's going to be going through?
Well, he is experienced driver. He is, I wouldn't say old because he is a couple of years older than me, but I would say he is a driver and a guy who has done it before. So I think he's come. I think he's coming to this next challenge in Cadillac. I wouldn't say relaxed, but let's say confident. Yeah, he's coming confident. He knows what he has to do. He don't know the car yet, but anyone from the field for 2026 season don't know the cars yet. So I think that's why he's feeling a bit calmer when it comes to the cars and the performance of the cars and the drivers, because nobody know what will happen. It could be the case that Cadillac will be dominating, but obviously it could be the case that Cadillac will be 2 seconds behind.
For sure. I think the fact it is new regulations and a new team, obviously, again, bodes well for both drivers in the sense of the pressure isn't going to be as high. But I mean, we never know. Cadillac don't seem like they're coming in to be a bottom runner team. It looks like they're coming in and they want to be up there with the team. So I do think there'll be a due amount of pressure, but not as much as Checo spoke about, at Red Bull, the pressure, and not just the pressure from the results, but also the pressure from the environment. Being in a place where, and no one will come on to speak about it, you're in a team where it's tainted more to your number one driver than to yourself, and you actually being close or beating your number one driver is a problem. That environment would have a very big negative mental impact on someone. And what do you think? Do you think there's any options when you're in that kind of scenario where you're the number two driver, it's all tainted towards the first? Do you think you've got an option to go out there and prove yourself, or do you think at that point the decisions are already kind of made?
Well, if we're talking about Red Bull, he had nothing to say because he could take the seat and accept that he'll be second driver, or he could leave Formula One. And so we know that even the big talents, sometimes the one season of racing could be dramatic. We had many juniors that they were ready to go to Formula One, but they never did because there was no space for them. Simply as that. Oscar Piastri, he won Formula Two in 2021, and there was no, or 2021 or 2020, I don't remember, and there was no space for him, for the champion of Formula 2, and he couldn't find it anywhere. Then he landed as a test driver in Alpine. So he was actually lucky that McLaren wanted him, even when he was the reserve driver, test driver. So, well, as Checo Perez, he had to take it. He was fighting for it. He was leaving sweat, he was leaving blood, he was leaving tears on the track to be able to race in those Formula Car vehicles. So I'm sure that he knew what he's doing. He knew the terms. Obviously, you can be as much as good as possible in the machinery versus Max Verstappen, but if the project, as Christian Horner said to him, if the project is made for Max Verstappen, if you are quicker, there could be a problem sometimes.
Yeah, I think one of the main shocks that I took from the interview, and I think obviously I've heard it in the media in the past, but to have him confirm it was quite a big shock, as the Horner accusations of, listen, we're running two cars because we have to. The setup is for Max. I mean, I can't imagine what it must be like to have a conversation with someone like that, especially when you've got your own personal ambitions to be world champion, winning constructors and things like that. In regards to the steps that Checo took, obviously he took a big risk in obviously taking that step away from the Red Bull and obviously then taking that break. Because again, like you said, Piastri as the champion of F2 didn't have a seat. So there was a very big chance that was the last we were going to see of Checo. I mean, again, if we weren't getting an 11th team, that we wouldn't be seeing Checo more than likely. So he took a very big risk. If Checo was to, let's say in an alternative universe, Checo was to stay at Red Bull, what do you think they would have needed to see from him for him to be what they would call a competent second driver to Max?
they would want him to be basically second to Max. If Max is winning, they want him to be on the podium. But we know he wasn't. He was struggling to get out of the Q1s and Q3s many times. He was struggling to keep at the pace. But sometimes we've seen fantastic performances, like he won Monaco, he won Singapore, he won Baku, out of nowhere. And, in the beginning of 2022, I believe, he was or just behind, or he was even in front of Max in the beginning of the season. So this is what they wanted to see officially, because obviously, as he said, there was a problem when he was a bit quicker than Max, and they didn't really wanted him to be quicker than Max. But at the same time, they wanted him to be as quick as Max, but not quick exactly like him. So it's it's a very difficult situation for him and for Red Bull as well, to find the perfect spot to make sure for the Red Bull that Max will be happy, and for Checo that he will be able to delivering the results that they want him to deliver.
But how, obviously, you work on a pit lane. I mean, how do the teams expect Checo to be second to Max when all the upgrades are coming in and they're coming towards Max? Albon has said, and lots of drivers have said in previous interviews, Max likes that very front, agile car, right on the nose. How would, from a team perspective, are they expecting Checo to come second when they're not catering to him at all?
Politics. Simple answer. Politics. Like, they need to run two cars. If they like it or not. They have a world champion in the team that they want him to win title after title after title after title. Hopefully 10 of them. Yeah, we know that won't happen. But in the same time, if they want to have this champion and they put everything, all bets on him, they still remember that they have a second driver. The second driver has to do something, basically. They just leave him to it. You deal with it. And if you won't be able to deliver, we'll look somewhere else, basically. This is what happened. And we know that Red Bull made terrible decisions.
Yeah, I mean, they've made a lot of decisions. I think they are, with the moves they're making, the personnel they're bringing in and getting rid of, it does look like they are starting to try and clear the waters, get rid of some of that toxicity, and bring in, I think Max and whoever is going to race alongside him, they're always going to struggle. He's always going to maybe outshine. But again, it's about creating that environment. And another thing I took from the interview, he spoke a lot about the mental side, which I'm sure we obviously all know, but the mental side of the sport, how it's not as simple as just drive faster. If you're not in an environment where you feel loved or cared for or appreciated or any of those kind of things, you're going to really struggle to get the squeeze the utmost performance out of that car. From your perspective, anybody who comes into Formula One, what would you say the main attributes of that person has to be other than being a faster driver?
You have to be tough. There's only 20 people in the world who is doing what you're doing. And you have to be the best out of these 20 people. If you are 20th out of 20, there is very high risk that you not finish the season, or you will not find the contract for the next year. Simple as that. Because there's another 50 younger guys than you that are as quick as you, and they want to come and prove themselves.
You want their spot.
Exactly. So you have to be tough. You have to understand that people are sometimes talking shit about you. They don't know, obviously, what's in your head and what you're capable of. And we know that Checo is capable of fantastic race. We've seen it, for example, his great defense in 2021 in Abu Dhabi, or winning multiple races, getting poles. So he is capable of doing that. But whoever is coming to Formula One, I'm sure the first advice that they're getting is don't listen to people. Trust yourself and do what you can. You're doing best, but don't listen to them, because it won't change anything.
You have to have that level of self-assuredness to
Absolutely.
be able to come into that sport and know your ability. And that's why sometimes when I see people like Hamilton and people like Norris, when they're doing interviews kind of talking down on themselves, it kind of brings a a bit of a feeling because it's. Do you generally feel like that? Are you just speaking like that because obviously you've just had a bad result and you're in front of the camera? Because again, I think for you to do well and do better in the sport, you need to have that self-assured. You can't think I'm done or this guy's faster than me or whatever it is, because you're just never going to get to where you need to be. Checo mentions in the interview, confidence is everything. You know, if you one of the things I would say is the drive that's come through. If you're not a confident person, I don't think that's the sport for you to thrive in.
Absolutely, Jason. You've seen it yourself. We've been on the race together in November. What was the first excuse if the driver is not performing correctly?
It's always the car.
Exactly. It's never the first thought. It's never I'm bad. So that's the approach that every driver should have. And as you said,
Yeah.
Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris, they look on themselves down. Absolutely. Well, I know that Hamilton he knows what he's capable of. You know, he's almost the best of the best. He's equal with Michael Schumacher or the world titles. So I'm sure he knows what he can do. When he is saying that, I'm bad, I can't drive or whatever, maybe it's basically screaming for help. Maybe mental health, maybe not, maybe, we remember that he had, I don't know, I don't remember the lady's name, the blonde hair lady that was running around with him in Ferrari and in
Yes.
Mercedes. I think she was his physio as well. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
she's still in the paddock, but the drivers need people like that. They need the person who will trust. It cannot be necessarily therapist. You can, spend thousands of pounds on it, but if you don't trust someone to say, I'm bad and talk me through it, what I should think, they won't be able to do it. Actually, this is what I was saying in the beginning of the podcast. I found out today that actually Helmut Marko, the most hated person, let's say, in the Formula One paddock, thankfully not anymore, but actually him was paying by himself for the therapist for Checo Perez almost £6,000 an hour for his therapist
Oh,
on the last season. When he flagged up that something was not okay, and he was doing it from his personal money, not from the team's money. So it shines a bit of good light on Helmut Marko. It's not, negate all of the bad that he has done, but it also shows that people like him can also understand this aspect, not necessarily think through what they have to say, straight away after something will happen, but actually upon reflection, fair enough, respect, he's done good.
yeah, no, for sure. And like, listen, as much as he is probably one of the more disliked people in the paddock, I mean, he has done some good to the sport and probably a lot of good to the sport if you are a fan of Helmut Marko. I mean, obviously, to hear about him obviously paying for that out of his own pocket, I mean, some of the things that Checo says in the interview, talks about things all being put in one direction or being built around one direction, also saying it's quite hard. And he did try to speak up a few times, but it didn't land very well. So, obviously that's quite a bit contradicting. It's quite an interesting point because he clearly feels that regardless of that extra support that he was getting from people, e.g. Helmut, he still didn't feel like enough was being done or enough of his issues were being kind of handled effectively, which goes to show, which says a lot if it's Helmut Marko that's on the good side helping and he's still struggling.
Well, this is what I said. Like therapist is sometimes is not enough. You can even that. This is how Nico Rosberg won his title over Lewis Hamilton 2016 mentally because they had the same machinery. They were even swapping the pit crew and mechanics mid-season to make sure that there's no accusation of manipulations or setting up the title or anything like that. So I believe what was lacking here is basically human touch. What he needed to sit down with Adrian Newey, with Christian Horner, Helmut Marko, four of them together, and just listen to him. What is happening, and what can they do to help him? I think maybe it happened, maybe not. If it happened and it had place, then nothing was done about it, as we've seen. But it didn't happen. That's another reflection that maybe that's why Red Bull is changing right now, maybe to accommodate those needs.
Yeah, like I said earlier on, I think there's definitely a bit of a switch going on, a bit of a different energy. And even with the Adrian Newey thing, I do believe there's obviously a part of, I want to go and do something else, something new. there's also going to be the big check that probably blank check that Aston Martin are probably giving him as well. But it does go to show there was something not right in that camp, and that is why people weren't performing to their best. I mean, Adrian Newey, for example, is somebody with a lot of legacy in the sport. You know, you want to be driving, if you can drive any designer's car, you want to be driving an Adrian Newey car. And I think Checo knows that. And he spoke about his legacy in the sport as well. And saying, you know, it's not about being at one team and being a second driver or just being happy I'm in the sport. It's about how I want to be remembered. And to me, that says he's not happy with just being in the background and, you know, just letting sort of, I guess, life pass you by as an F1 driver. He wants to be fighting for titles. He wants to be given the opportunity to succeed and be the best he can be because he wants to look back. He spoke about, you know, the fame. He's like, I don't want to be famous. And he said, you know, I hope that in a few years I'm less famous and I can do a lot more normal things. But you can tell he just genuinely wants to leave a legacy for him, for his family, for everyone who looks back on the sport that says that he wasn't just a number two driver. He was someone that was able to go out there and win championships.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, when you're an F1 driver, you need to, as you mentioned, you need to have this kind of selfishness. And he's done his homework, even if he left Red Bull broken, or maybe not. We don't know because there was no official, let's say, departure of Checo from the Red Bull. Um, so I think he's done his homework. He came back stronger, definitely more confident. This is what we need to see, and let's hope that once we'll see him in Australia on Albert Park, he will do fantastic time in qualifying and finish at least in points.
How important do you think a legacy is in this sport?
Absolutely, it's definitely maybe not fundamental, but we know that Formula One, it's very historic sport. Yeah, we, as you mentioned, that Adrian Newey, Lewis Hamilton, Michael Schumacher, Jean Todt, Ross Brown, all of those names are still resonating with us because we still remember them, even if they're not necessarily in the paddock anymore. Some of them, it's definitely one of the most important pillars of Formula One. The history, the whole legends about Formula One, even if we're watching, intros or some kind of recaps from old Formula One races, people are still doing it. Why are they doing it? Because they want to see it. Even Phil was saying that he was watching some race of I think it was Indica actually, over the Christmas, and he was saying, "I'm watching this race for like 15th time, but every single time I'm hoping the results will be different." And it still keeps the people in those emotions. So the legacy, absolutely, it's definitely important. And every single driver who is coming, they want to be written on the walls of the Formula One, headquarters, on the championship trophy, wherever, for people to remember him. And there is, as I mentioned, there are names that they will be remembered forever.
Do you think there's a chance that this return could damage, ruin, maybe stain his legacy at all? Or do you think no matter what he does, he comes out? Because obviously he's not had the greatest exit, and I guess he wants to kind of finish on a high. Obviously, but even as we've spoke about him across the last 20 minutes, he's a good driver. He's had good results. He can win. So he has got that kind of legacy. But do you think there's a chance he could come to Cadillac and ruin that, or do you think this is only going to be a positive for him?
I think that at this moment it can be only positive because, well, he left Red Bull not on a really good terms, not with really good results. He left also like 2 or 3 races until the end of the season, so he didn't even finish the 2024 season. So I think he will do only good to himself. Like, as I mentioned before, he is a bit more relaxed, a bit more chilled. With Valtteri Bottas, you cannot be, stressed out, the crazy guy, that he can do ridiculous stuff sometimes, like his calendars, his adverts that he's doing. And this is the legacy that they want to remember as well. Like, Valtteri Bottas haven't won any title. Valtteri Bottas won a couple of races, made a couple of poles, but he wasn't any like major driver. But people remember him because of the person who he was. Same like James Hunt, for example. He had only one championship, but everybody remembers James Hunt. Same Damon Hill.
For sure. Yeah, I think legacy is definitely really important. He- for him, and I think more so less for us as fans, but more so as a driver, your legacy, how you are seen and how you see yourself looking back. One day you're going to be 60, 70, 80 years old, sitting in a chair somewhere, and they're going to be looking back on your life, and it's, what impact did I make? What difference did I make? So,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely very big for F1 drivers. Um, but yeah, I mean, we've come to the end of the podcast, unfortunately. I've had a great time talking about the podcast. I think we should do more of that, watching other podcasts, talking about things like that, because I think it's a really good topic, and I'm sure the fans enjoy it as well. Guys, if you do, let us know in the comments. If you don't, also let us know in the comments. Let us know what you do want to see. Obviously, go and follow us. Follow us on YouTube. Go follow all of our other social medias, TikTok, Instagram, all the rest of it. But yeah, guys, we hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys.
Peace.
Bye bye.